Star Wars Episode 1: The Phantom Menace. Now, there is absolutely nothing I can say about this movie that hasn't already been said thousands of times by loads of different people. The Phantom Menace remains probably the most hated movie of all time. No, it's not generally considered to be the worst movie ever, but more hate is thrown towards this movie than any other movie. And I can definitely see why. I was only 3 years old when this movie came out, so as a kid I loved it. No, I wasn't a fan of the huge amounts of exposition, which pretty much take up 85% of the film, but I loved the battle scenes, the pod racing, and also some of the effects too. I loved the locations we were given. At that age, I'd never seen anything as bright and colourful as places like Coruscant. But yeah, in hindsight, what I loved about the film really is just a small portion of the actual film, and also those bits don't hold up at all. I'm now going to talk about the plot of the film, and I don't mean the basic plot, I mean the complete plot, everything that happens from the start to the end. The film starts off on a spaceship where Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn, played by Liam Neeson, and his apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi, played by Ewan McGregor, are preparing to negotiate with the Trade Federation to end a blockade of battleships placed around the planet Naboo. However, a Sith Lord known as Darth Sidious orders them to be assassinated and for Naboo to be invaded by battle droids. They manage to escape and end up on Naboo, where Qui-Gon saves an outcast known as Jar Binks. Jar Jar is a part of a species known as the Gungans. Jar Jar takes the Jedi to his underwater Gungan city and they ask for them to help the people of Naboo. However, they say no. So they decide that the best thing to do for now is to get into the capital, save the Queen, known as Queen Amidala, played by Natalie Portman, and escape Naboo in a spaceship. They do this, but the ship is damaged, meaning that they have to stop off onto the planet Tatooine to get parts. Qui-Gon, Jar Jar, R2-D2, I don't think I need to explain who he is, and Amidala, disguised as a handmaiden, venture out onto one of the cities. They go into a junk shop where they meet the owner Watto and his 9-year-old slave Anakin Skywalker. Qui-Gon senses a strong presence of the Force inside of Anakin and is convinced he is a prophet who will bring balance to the Force, so Qui-Gon decides to wager Anakin's freedom. Anakin has been building a pod racer so he can take part in a large pod race. Qui-Gon wagers that if Anakin wins, he becomes free. Of course, he does win and he gets to go with Qui-Gon. However, his mother must stay and remain a slave. On their way back to the spaceship, they are attacked by a Sith apprentice known as Darth Maul, who has been sent by Darth Sidious to capture Queen Amidala. After the battle, which doesn't really go anywhere, they take Queen Amidala to the planet of Coruscant. Queen Amidala is taken in front of Supreme Chancellor Valorum to plead her case. Also, Qui-Gon requests that Anakin be trained to become a Jedi Master. However, the Council are afraid that he is too vulnerable to the dark side. Qui-Gon decides that he will train Anakin himself. Amidala requests that a new Chancellor is elected due to how incapable and corrupt Valorum is. She also decides to return to Naboo with the Jedis. She then manages to persuade the Gungans to join her in an alliance against the Trade Federation. So then we have like 20 minutes of action. There are 3 or 4 simultaneous battles happening. Anakin enters a vacant starfighter and accidentally turns autopilot on. He then, due to complete luck, manages to destroy the Trade Federation's droid control ship, which deactivates all the droids. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan then team up to fight Darth Maul. Now, I know a lot of people actively dislike this scene, but pretty much everyone will agree it's the best scene in the movie. I personally have always enjoyed the Darth Maul lightsaber battle. Even if it is incredibly over the top and overly choreographed, I still enjoy it. During the battle, Qui-Gon is killed. Obi-Wan avenges his death by slicing Darth Maul in half. While dying, Qui-Gon asks that Obi-Wan trains Anakin personally. Afterwards, Valorum is arrested and Senator Palpatine, played by Ian McDiarmid, is elected as the new Supreme Chancellor. The film ends similar to A New Hope does, with a large celebration. So, what do I think of the film? What do you think? I'm with everyone else for the most part. The film is just not good. Before we talk about why it's not good, let's look at the few actual good things in the film. The lightsaber fight at the end is fun, I guess. It's very fast paced, which you can kind of expect. This film was aimed towards the kids of the late 90s, so they had to adapt it to more modern audiences. The lightsaber fights in the original were much slower. Of course, they were packed with huge amounts of emotion and every swing was more impactful. but action movies then were much slower than when The Phantom Menace came out. I know it's shit that they changed it, and the lightsaber fights in not just this film but the whole prequel trilogy aren't very good, but at least they're exciting and well choreographed. Also, I really like Darth Maul as a villain. He is very dark and mysterious. He very rarely speaks, and a lot of the time we see him, especially earlier in the film, he is shown only in the shadows. I speak for everyone when I say that he should have been in this movie way more, and although I've never properly seen it, I'm glad they brought him back in the Clone Wars TV show. That is honestly all I like about the movie. Although at the time the special effects may have looked good, they have aged horribly. Everything looks terrible and fake. The original trilogy still holds up to this day because they were all practical effects, at least they were until the special editions came out. But everything here looks like a cutscene from a video game. Everything from the locations to the characters made entirely out of CGI. I mean, just look at this scene from the underwater Gungan city. The human characters blend in horribly. But I can't really fault it when at the time this was the best they could achieve. Now there are loads of different little things that piss not only me but loads of other Star Wars fans off. But before talking about those things, I think I should talk about my biggest problem with this film. It is completely and utterly dull. Like seriously, it's just not interesting at all. Only a small percentage of the film is action based. The rest of the movie is just really bland exposition. The dialogue is horrendous. Now it may not be as cringe-inducingly bad as episodes 2 and 3's dialogue, but it's still terribly written. What makes it even worse is that the acting is about as monotone as humanly possible. I mean, a lot of the time it's hard to know who the real droids are. A big problem with all three of the prequel movies when it comes down to acting is that everyone is either incredibly dull and uninteresting or laughably over the top. This movie is pretty much just all dull acting, and that's not something I blame on the actors, that is something I blame solely on George Lucas. He did a terrible job when it comes down to the direction of this movie. Not just when it comes down to the acting, but also when it comes down to the action scenes too. Take a look at the pod racing scene. This is something that people always say is a highlight in the film, and yeah, it pretty much is, but it's still horribly flawed. The scene goes on forever. It just feels like it's never going to end, and what makes it even worse is how it's shot. There are way too many still shots of the pod racers flying by. I want to actually follow the action. Instead we keep the same shot of the camera panning to the right to see a pod racer drive into the distance over and over again. It makes what should be an exciting and fun scene into a tedious and overly long scene, although that's pretty much just this film in a nutshell. You can actually ignore this film and you wouldn't lose anything. In fact, ignoring this film makes the prequels tied to the original trilogy better with less plot holes and inconsistencies. Now to talk about the things everyone talks about when it comes to shitting on this movie. First off, Jar Binks. Jar Binks was meant to be the comic relief in this film, so anytime he's on screen we are given some of the most unfunny slapstick I have ever seen. Everything about him is incredibly annoying. Not only that, he is also an incredibly racist stereotype. Not just Jar though, but also Watto. I mean, if you type in Star Wars Jew into Google, you get Watto instantly, because he is meant to be a Jewish stereotype. I mean, come on, did people really think that was acceptable to do? Another big thing that I think even George Lucas knew was a terrible idea, because it was barely ever brought up again, was the introduction of midi-chlorians. In the original trilogy, it was established that basically anyone can be trained to have the Force, but in this movie they say it's all biological and it all depends on how many midi-chlorians you have. That was a terrible addition and a massive middle finger to fans. There are loads of things that don't add up in the grand scheme of the two trilogies, like the fact that Obi-Wan never remembers C-3PO or R2-D2 in A New Hope despite being with them in this film. Also, how could a 9-year-old boy create a robot like C-3PO? That is just a few of the many plot holes in this film. At the end of the day, this definitely deserves all the hate it gets. As I said earlier, it's far from a terrible movie, but it's not good. In fact, it's pretty bad. There are multiple fan edits out there that aim to make the film overall better experience, but there's only so much you can do to make the film decent before making the story impossible to understand, and it's already pretty hard to understand. In fact, I wasn't really sure what the plot was at all until reading it for this review. I've seen this movie probably hundreds of times and still never understood it completely. I think that's just a true testament to how badly written it is. All in all, The Phantom Menace is just a bad movie. This is easily the worst in the prequel trilogy. I give Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace a 5 out of 10.